Good evening and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for this installment of AP US History. All right, today we are going to discuss Hamilton's financial plan. Alexander Hamilton is the Secretary of Treasury under George Washington. Now, he was a big shot in the American Revolution, got close to George Washington there. They developed a close relationship, kind of became an economic genius, was very instrumental at the Constitutional Convention. He actually proposed a monarchy, not a monarchy, but a lifetime president, a lifetime Senate. He was very much distrustful of the people and wanted the Constitution to kind of protect the government from the masses and the people. So that's kind of the perspective he's going to be coming at you with here with his financial plan. Okay, so as Washington Secretary of Treasury, Hamilton comes up with some basic goals. He wants to establish credit for the United States. We want to be able to borrow money. Okay, we're a new country. We don't have a lot. If we can borrow money from other nations, that's going to be helpful. He also wants a sound currency, so we have a money system. Because one of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation was they could not coin any money, so he needed to develop some kind of system that had money backed that would have some validity amongst the citizens. Also, he wanted to strengthen the national government. Hamilton was from the West Indies. All right, actually didn't have a father, so you can imagine what they called him, and we can't say it on the air. But he wanted the national government to be strong because he was a nationalist. He didn't think of the states in particularly as important because, after all, he wasn't really from any of them. He was just an American in his eyes. And then he said we needed to secure the support of the people with property. If the people with property liked the government, then the government had a better chance of being successful. Okay. The best way to do that is to owe them money. All right, and that's kind of where he's going to go with his financial plan. Okay. What he proposed to do is to pay the foreign debt, pay these other countries that we owed money to. Okay, we borrowed money from the Revolution, we owed the French, we owed the Dutch, okay, among other countries, the Spanish. So if we could repay that debt, then people would say, hey, America's got good credit. You'll find this out in your life when you graduate college. You borrow money, pay it back, people will be willing to loan you more. The biggest controversy of his plan was this idea of assumption. Okay, assumption might be a good word for the word wall. So anybody not named Taylor that puts it on Tuesday morning might get a few extra points on their note cards this week. But the idea was to assume the debts unpaid by the states. Now, why shouldn't Massachusetts and New York and Delaware pay their debts? Because he said we're one country now. If we assume those debts, the states will be loyal to the federal government, and the people that they owe the money to will be loyal to the federal government. Okay? You're not going to be loyal to somebody that doesn't owe you money. You want to be loyal to the person that owes you money so they pay you back. So he was going to assume all the debts unpaid by the states. That was extremely controversial because the northern states had a lot of debt still. Okay? Southern states had paid it off. So the southern states didn't particularly want to assume the debts because they had it paid off, and their taxes would have had to pay back the debt, and they didn't think that was fair. All right, now we got to get money to be able to do that, so Hamilton proposes to raise money through what are called excise taxes. Another great word for the word wall, anyone not named Taylor. So what we're going to do is we are going to tax goods within the country. All right, so things like liquor and jewelry, luxury items that only the rich could pay. Hamilton wanted to tax those to generate some more revenue. Figure those people had the money, they would be less likely to complain. Okay. Also, he wanted tariffs, which is a tax on imports. All right. I believe tariffs is already on our word wall. I see it there in blue. Very good. So we're going to tax imports, and we're going to tax goods made within the country that are sold from one American to another. Okay. That tax, especially on liquor, leads to the Whiskey Rebellion in Pennsylvania of 1794, okay, because the whiskey farmers are upset by the tax because they are the ones growing the grains and things on the western frontier of Pennsylvania. Does this sound familiar? Frontier farmers upset with East Coast merchants and moneyed interests, okay? Might sound like bacon or Shays to me. So these whiskey farmers were upset because they were in the western part of the state of Pennsylvania out here, okay? And they would grow their grains, right? Now you can turn grains into two things. You can turn it into bread or you can turn it into liquor, okay? If you turn it into bread and then make this trip across the Appalachian Mountains to Philadelphia where the people are and try to sell it, the bread's going to spoil, go bad, get moldy, etc. So the only way they could really make money off of the grains is to turn it into liquor, okay? Or whiskey. And then ship that over. Liquor doesn't go bad. It actually gets better with age. So when they would bring that over, then they would be able to sell that and make a profit. But as soon as the taxes went up on it, they got upset. They rebelled. They threaten the tax collectors. All the things that happened during the Revolution and the Stamp Act are what these whiskey rebels did. Okay, so as you see in the video, in the picture here, Washington leads 13,000 soldiers, more than he ever had in the American Revolution, out to the frontier to put down this rebellion. And pretty much the second he saw, the whiskey rebels saw Washington coming, they gave up and submitted to the federal government, kind of establishing that the federal government was going to be dominant over these local states and rebels. All right, wrapping up here. We're going to impose a tariff on domestic industries, or to encourage domestic industries. What's going to be a protective tariff. We're going to protect our local businesses, okay? So if you are making shoes, for example, in the colonies or in the states now, okay, and those shoes cost $1 per pair, all right, and there's shoes, these are U.S. shoes, and then you have shoes made in England. UK stands for United Kingdom, as you know, okay, and those shoes cost $1. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to put a tariff on those shoes, okay, not to make money, all right, or not to make anything cost more or anything like that, but what we're going to do is we're going to put a tariff of, let's say, 25 cents on these shoes now that the British government is going to pay to the United States. But now those shoes cost $1.25 instead of the dollar that it actually costs to make them, okay? So if you have a choice, are you going to buy shoes made in England, or are you going to buy shoes made in the United States that cost $1 as opposed to the $1.25? All right, knowing how cheap we all are, those British shoes won't be bought, and we're going to buy American shoes. So it's going to help America grow industrially, all right, with this protective tariff, okay? He's going to create a Bank of the United States that we're going to discuss in class on Tuesday. All right, that's going to coordinate all the financial activities for the country. It's going to determine interest rates. It's going to loan money. It's going to hold money. It's going to secure investments, things like that. This generates a huge controversy and a big split between Hamilton and Washington Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson, okay? And there's a nice chart in your packet about how the bank is going to work, all right? That concludes today's lesson from the Kuhn Academy. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, we're not just learning history, we're making history. All right, have a great night.